Welcome back and thank you for choosing to stay with us. Our political affairs reporter, Daniel Kariuki, spoke to the outgoing Netherlands ambassador to Kenya, Martin Broer, on the highs and lows of his tenure. As I exit the Africa Speaks, I leave you with this particular interview. My name is Anki Dorisumbat. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Of course, we want just to get much of your tenure here in the country and much of what maybe you've done, much of what you've experienced. First and foremost, maybe you can tell us how has been the experience you being the ambassador of Netherlands to Kenya?
Well, it has been a very positive experience, I must say. It was a bit of a weird start. I came here in September 2020. I would have loved to start a month earlier or even 2 months earlier, but COVID times restricted my coming here because of policies in the Netherlands, but also because of policies here in Kenya. Those were very stringent times.
I am very sure you have one key achievement or several of them that you would be very proud of as the ambassador of Netherlands to Kenya in the period that you have been here. Maybe what are some of these achievements that you will be proud of?
I'm proud of two things. And I'm not claiming that I've done it alone because there are many others who play a role. But both are showing how important it is to take a political view on the relationship. One is what happened with in the refugee camps. When I came, we are as the Netherlands also quite a big partner, also financially, in trying to get the services in the refugee camps in Kakuma and in Dadaab. And then in my second year, the announcement came of the closure of the camps. And at that moment, what I did is I asked all my colleague ambassadors who also have programs in those camps to come to the table together with UNHCR, and we discussed what can we do, because we don't think this is a solution for the future for Kenya. And we did a number of things. We identified what actually is the total contribution that we make. So we added up programs and we showed what the ongoing portfolio was. We analyzed what Kenya had promised also internationally in terms of how to deal with the refugee community. And a process of dialogue started with the government, each of us doing that individually, together and as backing up UNHCR. Maybe you remember that in the last couple of years, 3 times the High Commissioner on Human Rights was here. And the government decided, based on those conversations and based on their own assessments, that they needed to go into another way. And so they said, okay, we will not close the camps, but let's go for another solution, now often referred to as the Sharika plan. And look at an integrated solution in which the host communities and the refugee communities are being approached equally and at the same time. So much more from a developmental perspective. And that breakthrough that we initiated with a couple of meetings and then with the follow-up also given by other partners in the interaction with the government and coming together to the understanding that there were other solutions that were preferable and fitted more within the commitments that Kenya had made internationally on the refugee question, that was opened up and that we had another engagement and another partnership on the refugee question, I think was really very, very pivotal. And something a bit the same happened just a week ago. A week ago, there was the UN conference on civil society here in Nairobi. And there was one day before that international conference for the national CSOs. And we had been working, and I need to tell you a little bit about how we are organized in the Netherlands. We have very strong civil society organizations. mostly on a voluntary basis. And it is really one of the characteristics of the Dutch society. And we have always felt that here in Kenya, the CSOs were a bit fragmented, had not joined up. Also, their legal status was not very clear. The transparency around financial flows was not very clear. So how could that be improved? And there was on the table the old PBO Act, the Public Beneficiaries Organizations Act. And we thought, can we use this international conference and the mobilization day before, can we use that to plead with the government once more of maybe gazetting the PBO Act so that it would come into action? And that actually happened. And that was not done because we lobbied ourselves with the government, but we just addressed it to the CSOs and we said, is this not the opportunity? Should you not mobilize? And they picked up that message, and they did a wonderful work, because on Friday, during the conference and the closing remarks, the president announced that he had gazetted it, the PBO Act. So it's showing how, let's say, grabbing political processes that are on the way, and if you find the right tone and the right message, changes are possible. And changes that are possible that come from within. Because we are only making suggestions, but we have no decision-making power on all those issues whatsoever.
Let's talk about Kenya and the Netherlands and the relations in terms of economy, in terms of importation, exportation. How would you describe the relations between Kenya and Netherlands and their specific maybe innovations that during your tenure have been brought into the country?
Yeah. Let me go back a little bit when I came in. Right. When I came in, my predecessor had been working very hard to get a higher economic profile. And we did that because there was quite a substantial program of development cooperation in the country. And we tried to use that program, or he tried to use the program with his staff to get more private sector in delivery of services through those programs. And he really made advances on that. And when I came in, we said, well, are we not within the limit of growth, within that framework of cooperation and then including private sector in it? Should we not look at it more from the economic perspective itself? So what do we earn from it? What does Kenya earn from it? Let's become really economical on this. And that's what we set out to do. The growth in the exports of Kenya to the Netherlands, but also the imports of Kenya from the Netherlands, that is something that is sizable. We are now at about 1.1 million euro imports and exports together. And that has been a rapidly expanding market. Which I think is very good. But we've also given it a more strategic framework. I often talk about the gateway-to-gateway function. Let me explain that a little bit. The Netherlands is in the northwestern part of Europe. It's a small country, but it is to the west, it has the North Sea, and to the north also the sea. And then to the east, Germany, and to the south, Belgium. And we are a very important entry point into the European market. That's the port of Rotterdam, but also through air connections, Schiphol Airport, for instance, but also the port of Amsterdam is a very big port. So, and that's what we call with gateway. A lot of the goods that come into Europe pass through the Netherlands, and there is value addition on those flow of goods going to Germany, Poland, France, Italy, all the other countries. That's what we call the gateway function. Now, looking at Kenya, we have said continuously, Kenya is also a gateway into the Eastern African community. And that should be the access and the framework for our economic engagement. Because we have invested a lot in this flow of goods through the Netherlands. And this is also where an economic advantage of Kenya is in the long run. So can we be of any assistance? Can we exchange? What are you doing here in Kenya for that gateway function that we can learn from in the Netherlands? What are we doing that you can learn from? Now, that has led to a letter of intent that was signed 2 years ago by our Minister for Foreign Trade and Cooperation to work together for the next period of 5 to 10 years in strengthening cool logistics in Kenya. That is making use of the railway from Mombasa up to Logonot, basically. And that's very important because that's the Nakuru county in which also a lot of the flour companies are. And can we, by investing and stimulating and a better flow in the chain, can we stimulate that fresh produce from Kenya could also be delivered to Europe by sea instead of by air? That would have major climate repercussions. It would reduce the CO2, carbon dioxide emission by 90% if you bring it by sea instead of by air. And the technique, the modern technique, can do it. And it's already being applied in Colombia, in Latin America. So can we also do that for Kenya? It would improve the flow of fresh produce to Europe. It would also help to stabilize, let's say, the competitive position of Kenya in the flour business, basically, in the world. There are 4 major flour producers in the world. That's Colombia, Ecuador, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Why those 4? Because it's a combination of altitude and proximity to the equator. Those 2 determine largely whether you can have a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year production of flour. That is a unique position. And within those 4 countries, Kenya is one of the major. Colombia is the biggest. Kenya is the second, I think, at the moment. Colombia was already exporting by sea at lower cost, lower transition, and that's something that the consumer wants. If Kenya would not make that step, it could mean that the competitive edge of Kenya would disappear. As I said in the beginning, between the 3 and 4 million people are directly or indirectly getting income from the flour sector. It's one of the biggest in Kenya. It's not so known, but it's very big. Right. So by setting up and working together, which we are doing now, on strengthening the cold chain, the delivery, the collection points, the facility in the port of Mombasa, trying to get the direct shipping line. We're not yet there, but the initial use of sea transport has already reduced the sailing time now to 30 days. We want to bring it back to 20 days, if possible, because then we would have enough time. It just goes about flours when they are good enough to be transported. You bring them back to 2 degrees continuously. That's what we put them to sleep. And then at the end, when you raise the temperature again, they will start to flour, and they are as fresh flowers, even after 30 days, even after 40 days. So the technique nowadays allows you to do that. So that's an example where we are the major fresh produce port, the Rotterdam fresh produce port of Europe. And we said, well, all the knowledge that we have gained, we would like to invest here to see whether we can do that also for Kenya. It would allow a better export flow and saving on CO2 emissions.
You've talked about the achievements. You've talked of 2 main achievements. And during your tenure, have you encountered any challenges in the 4 years that you have been in the country? And maybe how have you managed to navigate the problems and the challenges that you may have encountered?
There has been one moment about a year ago in which one particularly vulnerable community which is the LGBTQI community, was under a lot of pressure. And we have no opinion about, let's say, the fact that you're homosexual, yes or no. That's not, but there are people who are, and there is a law in this country about how to regulate that. And that was a period in which that community was very much under threat, which went beyond the protection that is provided to them by law. And that was a moment that we opened our doors and we said, well, you can exchange. What are your problems? What are the dangers? Do you need more protection? We can not offer that, but we can at least ask for people to be less vigilant on it and to protect, to provide that protection. We were very happy that without further direct interference from our side, but that this was also taken up in the polity here in Kenya by just reducing the tension around it. And I think that is something that was very, very difficult because we do not have a role to play. It's not something that we want to promote. We were in it just for the protection of people.
Thank you very much. And as we wrap up, maybe what will be your advice and parting shot as your tenure comes to an end?
There is no government at all that can do it without its own population. So close interaction between private sector and government. Respectful of your separate responsibilities. Don't make that intransparent. There's enough corruption, let's not do that. But also with the society at large. So what we talked about on the PBO Act, that CSOs will be listened to, interact, but have something to bring to the table. Because you can learn from each other, you can inspire each other, and there is so much potential in Kenya. So I think the future is bright for Kenya. So make use of all the innovative capacity that is in this country to make the next step. And I'm sure it can be done.